Our listeners know that 2 years ago, I visited the Roosevelt Hotel in New York and had an opportunity to talk to some of the residents there. When I asked them about what do they call that? Not immunity, but asylum, they said, "What?" They had no clue what they were doing there. They just knew they were there and getting meal cards, free rent, and a place and motor scooters to ride around on. I talked to merchants who were trying to earn a living proximate to the Roosevelt Hotel. They reported that their business had all been but shut down. And then I walked back to my hotel 4 blocks away, due west, and I encountered 3 people on the streets who were homeless, and 2 of them were veterans. That got my attention, folks. And I bet you it gets the attention of our next guest, Douglas Ernest. He has got a movement to try and help our veterans. They are helping veterans by supporting them, hiring them, helping homeless veterans, and taking them through their 4 block empowerment transition from military to civilian life. Douglas Ernest, Captain Douglas Ernest, welcome to the truth.
Good morning, John. Hope you're doing well today, sir.
So, does that story that I related sound at all familiar to you? And what is the matter with our country and its value system for not being more supportive of our veterans who actually put themselves in harm's way to protect our freedoms?
That story that you laid out was a very sad narrative that you explained of the previous administration. And, not only did they botch the foreign policy for our nation, but they botched the administration's policy for our veterans that are desperately in need of these resources. I too watched these play out, and I would see documentaries on YouTube. I would see things on TV and on conservative news channel laying out the truth of what was going on out there. And it was very sad. Like, they would interview veterans that were homeless on the ground, but yet there was illegal migrants staying at the Roosevelt that the Biden administration was encouraging to come in. And what was wrong with our country was we made a mistake. First of all, I didn't think the election was a actually warranted election. I believe it was flawed, and that brought flawedness into the White House. It brought
How
somebody
about
in the leadership.
how about fake?
Fake?
Yeah, I was a lawyer in Georgia with on a lawsuit against the Fulton Board of Elections. I've seen the evidence. I've seen 200,000 or 20,000 fake votes in Fulton County, and as many as 400,000 in the state. And Raffensperger now, he got his training from Joe Biden, I guess, who shot the spy balloon down over the Atlantic after the mission was complete. Raffensperger is now going to clean up the voter rolls in Georgia
After a bad election. So we see this complete false narrative in the entire White House over the last few years, and it just made the suffering for the veterans out there even worse. So that was in my empowerment to write this book towards the middle of the Biden administration. I just felt like I couldn't be silent anymore. As a kid, I was taught by my grandparents to be silent and to be the silent majority and keep your views to yourself. But once I saw what was going on with the destruction of my nation, I just felt compelled to speak, and I was able to speak through my book. And I never imagined it would get the kind of movement that it had. It get that kind of direction. I get that much attention to it. So I've been so
the
blessed.
spirit of a
I
true
hope
patriot.
yes, thank you. And I hope that by writing this book, it makes a difference and encourages people to look out for veterans' needs and try to help contribute because they desperately need these resources to help put them back on their feet.
So tell us about your service. Where did you serve and in what capacity?
John, I joined the Army when I was 17 years old because I came from parents that didn't have enough money to pay for college. I left Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and joined the infantry in the U.S. Army. And 6 months later, I found myself on the ground in Operation Desert Storm as an infantryman. I then later stayed in the military and made a career out of it. And I bounced back and forth between infantry and armor, which is tanks. And then, throughout the years, I did what I was supposed to do. I paid attention, listened to my leaders. I became a patriot, someone that actually loved my country, appreciated my country. And I was able to find this deep appreciation because I was traveling to these world traveling the world and finding myself in these third world countries where everybody, they actually adored the USA. Everybody wanted to come here. Everybody wanted to be like us. And I finally, just stayed in the military and did two tours. One tour was the United States on the border of Mexico for 2003 when we guarded the border and we were concerned about terrorists coming in after 9/11. And the first tour was an Operation Desert Storm. My career was an absolutely awesome career. I had a great time in my whole life. I was blessed. I was fortunate. I had the best leaders. I had nothing but great things to say about my military experience. I know, I told you in our offline that I read Fred Galvin's book, and I understand he had the challenges in Afghanistan. But to me, I had probably the best career, the quintessential what you would write about the best career you could have in the military. I've had the best leaders, the best experience, and my journey has been nothing but awesome.
So was that Desert Storm 1 or 2 that you served in? I'm thinking 2 because you're a young guy.
It was both. It was Desert Storm 1. I was 17 years old and I was an infantryman. And the second Desert Storm, I was actually mobilized. I was a reservist during that time going to college. And I was mobilized and I was put in a unit that got deployed to the Rio Grande City, which is a border on the border, is a border city. And we actually kept an eye on the border down there because we were looking for terrorist cells to bring weapons across the border, and I was also training units that were on their way to Iraq. So my service was triangulated in many different ways because they used the reservists to plug the holes back then and to fill in those gaps where they need you, where the active duty forces couldn't do so.
So let me ask you, how did it make you feel when you learned that the premise for Desert Storm 1 was a lie?
I grew up as a kid being told that we had to do this for democracy. We had to do this for peace. We had to do this to protect our interests around the world and to help others around the world. So I was empowered as a young man to be able to fight and to put my life on the line. And when I did learn what had happened, truthfully, years later, decades later, and really understood it, I was very disappointed. That's a conversation me and my fellow veterans have all the time, and it's a great avenue of debate. I actually had a debate the other day in my office with a veteran who was going back and forth. He'd served in the Operation Desert Storm to a very close friend, and he has a different perspective. He was saying, we had to do what we have to do. You got to listen to your leaders, no matter what they tell you, whether you think it's right or wrong. You got to do it. And I said, yeah, I agree with you, my friend, but we have to understand we have to have our own opinion.
But what about when the leader flagrantly lies to you? What about when Pam Bondi tells us there is no Epstein list? And Cash Patel tells us, oh, I've seen the video. He committed suicide. Then they show us the video, and there's no real proof in the video that he committed suicide.
It's like it's this paradox that we have, John. Is you try to be a patriot, you try to be someone that loves your government, try to be someone that loves your nation, and then you do feel diminished. Is my feeling that I get when I find out that I'm being lied to. Like you mentioned, Desert Storm 1, the premise, the backdrop for Desert Storm 1 was to help others, and it turned out to be to help those on top. And then you just mentioned some of the smaller items, and I say smaller not to minimalize Epstein's life and what happened and that and how what I think should have been brought out and what I would have liked to see and be told the truth. But it's something that I don't know how to handle as a captain. I'm not on top. I'm not a politician. I try to find my way to make peace with it because I don't want to stop my focus, which is helping the veterans in need, people that really need me. I found my niche in life. I
Yeah,
found
you
what
stay
my
focused on the mission. I got you.
I try to stay in control of what I can control. And I'm really good at doing what I do, whether it's running my business, taking care of my family, being an extraordinary father, and then also working on my movement, my compulsion, which is to help my veterans. So I'm trying to do my best as I watch these feeds come out over time and I see the lies that are thrown at me. I've been watching lies for 4 years come at me and people telling me the sky is red when I can see
Mhm.
that it's blue. And I hope that I can have a better treatment from the Trump administration, as they mentioned Pam Bondi, because we already know most of the truth. We've been told, we understand, we've heard, the rumors have been substantiated when we thought we were going to get the truth. Now, just a quick question, John, why do you think that this is being swept under the rug again from the administration that promises to give us the truth?
Well, if you want my honest
Yes,
belief,
please,
and
please.
it is just a belief, I think that Epstein was working for the CIA, or maybe
Hmm.
he was working for Mossad, and that the revelation of that would be too hard for the American people to handle.
Hmm.
Not to mention the fact that it is illegal, that it
Hmm.
would be against the laws of our country, and it would also be against the laws of God. So that's my supposition. I mean, is there anyone in America today that believes that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, or more importantly, does anybody believe that he even acted? I don't even think he was in the sniper's nest.
Hmm.
I have devoted a very unhealthy, substantial portion of my life studying the Kennedy assassination. And there is no doubt in my mind that Lyndon Baines Johnson and Allen Dulles killed the 35th president of the United States. Why are their names continuing to be permitted to be on uh, iconic places like the LBJ freeway in Dallas? I think it is a disgrace that we continue to honor someone who killed his president. Um, it really bothers me. I mean, to think that our country and our government could be that corrupt. And I don't think that the worst offenders actually are the people who did it. Equally complicit are the people who cover it up. And I'm sure they think that they're doing the nation a favor in some way by doing it. I happen to think that the CIA fulfills a very important role in our national defense and protecting our interests around the globe. There's certainly thousands of people who put their lives in harm's way every day to help protect our freedoms. But there is a group of people in the intelligence community, I believe, that are off the reservation, that are doing things that are illegal and are flagrantly immoral, ruining people's lives. I mean, we talk about JFK, but what about the other 100 people that were killed in the aftermath, that were
Hmm.
witnesses in one way or another to the assassination? What about Corey Compatour in Butler, Pennsylvania, who was taken from his wife and two daughters at that theater in Butler?
Hmm.
And why have we not gotten the truth about it? And so that's just a long explanation leading me to the conclusion that I believe that we need a cleansing in America. We have
Hmm.
got to come up with a mode, a method for people to confess their sins or their knowledge, and that we get it all out in the open and we join hands as a country and say, moving forward, we're not going to do these things any longer. And if we do them, there's going to be a, a a line of authority where it is vetted and approved, because some of them may very much be in our country's best interest.
Let me ask you this again, and building on that, did you not think that the Trump administration and the people that he picked, which I thought was great leadership at the top, was going to fix some of the challenges that you just mentioned?
I absolutely did.
Hmm.
And it is a mystery to me that they have not done what they committed to do, and that now I feel that they are, to some extent, being disingenuous with the American people.
And I know that the Trump administration supported you because I remember, keeping you were pretty high profile when you were running. And, I would think that you have interconnections with people in that administration that you can voice your concern, and you do it, you haphazardly here on TV, putting yourself at great risk, that people that have great power and you're speaking the truth or attempting to put the truth out there, which you believe is the truth to people. Do you ever make that call where you call on folks that that you've had connections with, to say, "Hey, what is this? The American people want the truth." Have you done that, and do you get a response to that?
Well, I do it every Saturday from noon to 2 here on the John Fredericks Radio Network and broadcast across the web. Um, I have communicated with the Trump organization on a couple of things that I felt were very material,
Mhm.
particularly in light of Butler, where I felt that the president's safety was at risk. And I have related information that I've learned by studying and reading and talking to people. And
Hmm.
so, but they've got their hands full, and I don't think they're sitting up there obsessing about what John Gordon is saying on the truth every Saturday. But I'm going to continue to do it because I have children and I have grandchildren. And I also, like you yourself, although you've demonstrated your love for our country in a much more significant way than I have. And I want to take the opportunity to both commend you and thank you for what you have done. Shame on me for not having walked away from my education and career to go do the same. But, when I was in high school and college, the draft was not something that you look forward to. I mean,
Hmm.
I knew people who went to Vietnam and did not come back, or who went to Vietnam and came back very scarred. And so that was not something that my generation really yearned to do. And then when I was a freshman in college, I had a very high draft number. My brother says I've been lucky all my life. I don't know. I certainly think I'm very grateful to God, our Savior, for everything that He has done for me and allowed me to do. But then, Sam Nunn and the then president, I believe it was Jimmy Carter, or let's see, Carter, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jimmy Carter did away with the draft.
Hmm.
And so my age group, our generation, did a collective sigh of relief that we were not going to have to go and do that. Yet now, with the benefit of hindsight, I look back on my generation: sex, drugs, rock and roll, draft dodgers, hippies, pop festivals. I mean, have we been good parents to our children? I mean, I think my wife and I have, but I don't know that our generation has.
Hmm.
And I'm concerned about a generation of entitled people. And I don't know what we did to create that. But I know my wife and I wanted our children to have a better life than we've had. And we've had a
Hmm.
damn good life. There's no sour grapes here. I've been so fortunate. And I've also worked my butt off. And I hope that I role model that for my children. But
Hmm.
that generation is like, give it to me because I deserve it. You got to deserve it.
Oh, John, I do appreciate that because it's like just as talked to you earlier and had mentioned to you in my email, I've been a fan. I've kept my eye on you throughout the years, and I like
You're very
people
kind.
like
Thank you.
you're welcome, and people like you keep this disparities in our country at a low because you're able to relieve that tension and say some things that people are sometimes scared to say. And I am one of those people. I'm usually pretty contained in what I say. I'm pretty hard to get a rise out of me when I'm doing my interviews. I've done hundreds of these interviews. I've had extremely right wing, I've had extremely left wing, and people are always trying to get me to come to their point of view. And it's hard to get me to go there because I was in the
Wow.
military and they teach you to keep your mouth shut and don't say your opinion,
Sounds
but
like
do what
you've
you're
laid
told.
down a challenge. Anthony, we got work to do here.
So when I see people like you that put it out there and it's like, man, he's going to get assassinated in the middle of the night talking like that, I say to myself, it's people like you that keep that tension relieved and allow the gap to be bridged because other people are scared to talk like that. Maybe because of their training, maybe because of what they see on TV, but people like you help keep the truth is the name of your show out there. So I'd like you to just ask me anything you want to ask me and I'll loosen up a little bit, John, and
Well,
give you
I
what my
listen, I
feelings
think
are.
you're doing just fine, and I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate your coming on with us today. Just to give you a little insight into what you're saying, and I don't know, but I'll tell you two things. One, I'm 72, so I don't really care a whole lot. I have a wonderful wife and life and family. I don't want to leave this earth, but I'm prepared to when that day comes. But I also have a huge faith in God, and I just sort of give it over to Him, and I'm doing what I believe in my heart and brain is the right thing to do, and if I pay a price for it, then so be it. The other thing is that I was not a good student in high school. they had to burn the building down to get me out. So maybe I'm just not that. Maybe I'm not very smart. But you are very smart because you've not only written a great selling book, The Spirit of a True Patriot, but you also have followed your passion and have an automobile dealership, actually a pretty specialized one, uh, a Corvette dealership, which is a certainly a twist that I haven't heard before.
Yeah, well, John, thanks for mentioning my business. The name of my business is Corvette Warehouse, and we are the largest Corvette dealer in the Southwest, and approaching to be the largest Corvette dealer in the country. We're about this close to getting there. We have about 200 Corvettes in stock. When I was a kid, you mentioned those Vietnam veterans a little bit ago, and I was raised by Vietnam vets and by hippies. So
Yeah.
that my entire upbringing was this war. It
Well, you
was I
turned
was
out all right.
I did. I've been blessed by the Lord. I had both. I had
Yeah.
the hardcore Republican and the hardcore Democrat in my family, and thank God, the good prevailed because I grew up, with hippies in my family. I grew up with three Vietnam vets in my family, and my uncle, who came home from Vietnam, he served in the Vietnam era in that time as an accountant. He bought a 1979 Corvette, and when I was about 9 years old, 8 years old, I'm sitting on my grandma's porch step and he pulls up in this 1979 silver on red Corvette coupe. And I was just blown away. And I saw this iconic figure, which was my uncle. Everybody in my family loved this man, respected him, put him on a pedestal. He was such a outgoing, funny, charismatic man that had just done everything right in life. And I saw him get out of this car and it just kept a symbolic effect in my mind what that car meant. And to him, it meant the all American product line. It meant, freedom. It meant being a patriot. And to him, he was extremely patriotic. So I grew up thinking about this. I immersed myself in learning about Corvettes. And when I was in the military, I traveled everywhere with 3, 4 books about how to start a business and how to learn about the Corvette product line. And I learned everything I could about my dream, which is being Corvettes. I planned to do it as a hobby. I never ever imagined I'd be at this point in my life where I'd have 200 Corvettes to sell. I thought at best I might have 5 or have a few in my garage as I worked in a finance company, which is a degree I got from the U.S. Army. So I expected that I would do this as a hobby and it turned into something as a career. And I believe now, from looking back at my journey, it was because of my selfless service to my nation that allowed me to have my journey paved. Every time I came across somebody in the civilian world, they gave me the benefit of the doubt. They would always open the door. They would always give me that opportunity. And that's because of my service. I mean, it's just no other way around it, no beating around the bush. And then when I was selling my cars and doing parts and doing all these things to grow my business, which took over a decade to get it to break even, I was
Wow.
finally came to the realization that people help those that have helped their nation. Like there might be people that come buy a car from us just because of my service, just because they meet me and they say, "Hey, I'm going to buy a car from you over the competition because of what you've done for your nation." And that to me is extremely humbling. I've never expected to get this far in life. I'm so blessed, that my income has been this way up and down where I make a lot of money, lose a lot of money, make a lot of money, lose a lot of money. We're coming off some of the worst years of my career from the last couple of years of the Biden administration when they were giving away the kitchen sink to other nations and allowing imports to come in to destroy our nation's trade system. And when Donald Trump took hold around the beginning of the year, our record numbers started coming in. We turned around. We recovered our losses of the last 2 years, and we're on the trajectory for doing awesome things.
Well, good for
So my
you.
story is a story of passion, working hard, working smart. Following people that are ethical, good leaders, and then working the system. And that is following what you do as your passion in life, and then taking advantage of it. And I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs every day, people that do what they enjoy. The other day I met a guy at work that he, just happened to run into him, and his wife told me he was a veteran, and she told me that what he did for a career, he was self-employed, and he started telling me he had a charity, Warriors WP, and he's trying to do his part. And then we just connected immediately. He told me
That's
about his
awesome.
service in Afghanistan, his challenges with PS, younger kid, he's in his 30s, I'm in my 50s, and we were able to connect. So it's just me, it's just such a great experience to go to work. And I run into these people every day, self-employed electricians, plumbers, sign companies, people that do their own radio shows, people that do podcasts, people that do YouTube channels. I run into all these kind of people, and it's like kind of like just going to have Christmas every day at Corvette Warehouse. So extremely blessed. I write about it in my book, and I believe that all Americans have this opportunity, but you don't have in other countries. When I traveled to Saudi Arabia, Middle East, into Europe, they're so challenged to be able to start a business, to be able to launch something. It's so hard to be able to navigate the systems of these nations to be able to become an entrepreneur. But in this country, it's the easiest place in the world to start a business. Our country is extremely friendly to entrepreneurial
Yes.
behavior and opportunities, and people don't recognize that. If you look at the squad and AOC, they talk so bad about our country, and I can sit behind my screen and I am enraged, and I want to just scream out what I'm thinking because they talk so bad about this nation that gives you so much opportunity. People are fighting and dying to get to this country. People are cheating and lying to get to this country, but yet we talk so bad about this nation that gives us so much. And I hope that my work and my book can put that information out to the younger generation and let you know that this nation is not a bad nation. We are the greatest nation on earth. We only have 3% of the population, but we command 1% of the entire nation's and admiration. We have 99% of the wealth that people around the globe don't have. Our bums, our people that are homeless on the side of the streets that refuse to work, have more wealth and more power than the 99% of the world. They can still dial 911 and get help. They can still call for an ambulance. They can call for police help when they're in trouble. In most nations, you don't have that afforded to you. So I hope my work is able to transition people and give people an ideal that it is temporarily maybe not symmetrical in our country and things are not aligned perfectly, but this is the best nation in the world, and our perspectives need to change in order for this nation to get another 250 years underneath its belt.
So, where is the Corvette warehouse?
Corvette Warehouse is where you mentioned in Dallas, Texas. It's about 6 to 7 miles from where Kennedy was shot. We're on the same highway that where Kennedy was shot, Highway 35. We're in North Dallas, and the website is CorvetteWarehouse.com. If you need to take a look at the CorvetteWarehouse.com, you can click under Meet the Owner. There's a link to buy the book, and all proceeds from the book go to veterans charities, the four charities that you mentioned in the beginning of your show, John.
So, when I was a kid, we had my good friend and I, we had this tradition that every year when the automobile companies would come out with their new models in September, his dad would load us all up in the car and we would drive from dealership to dealership looking at the new models. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember the very first Corvette when it came out. That tells you how shows you how old I
Wow.
am. This was
Wow.
in the
In
60s,
the
and that car was so bad, man. I tell you, we were just in awe of and it was just really cool. And then we went back a couple of years later, I think, and the headlights actually retracted into the body of the car.
Mhm.
That was like, that blew us away. It is an iconic car that has really been part of the American automobile story. And you are so fortunate to be able to earn a living, and I think now a pretty good living at it. And that allows you then to fuel your passion, which is to help veterans. What exactly is the theme of the spirit of a true patriot?
The spirit of a true patriot is a call to people that they can actually achieve their dreams in life. And number two, if you're considering service or you have a challenge in life, to be able to navigate these challenges and be successful in it. I came from a family where my mom was making $300 a week cutting meat in a deli contestant. My dad was making $400 a week working at A.L. Smith Welding as making GM frames for trucks back when I was a kid, and they couldn't even make ends meet. There's times when we had to borrow money to make ends meet. You would never expect from that
Mm.
background to be able to navigate that journey to be able to end up where I'm at today. And again, my life is so great compared to what I've seen around the globe. My
Yeah.
life is so great to see what I see in today's youth, where they don't have a sense of empowerment and challenge, and they don't have a sense of wanting to take that analytical approach to life where say, hey, I can do things that I'm told I can't do. So my story is that I find a way to accomplish adversity in life, and I do this from using strategies and tactics that I learned in the military. I didn't create these things. I didn't develop them. These frameworks that are in the book were taught to me. A lot of these frameworks were given to me by Vietnam veterans. They weren't done on a computer, they weren't done on a cell phone, they weren't done on an iPad. They were done with paper and pen, hard work, grit, sand, getting your feet dirty, getting your hands dirty, getting in there and working, finding yourself, learning what you're passionate about, setting your goals. And when you set your goal and you find a way to lock onto your target, military perspective, you can find your way to navigate that journey and get to the end of the road and accomplish things that you set out to do. You know, if you look back at your life, you might say, "I'll never, how in the world would I have a podcast or the truth and people are going to listen to me around the globe?" But man, I knew about you before I even got the email that I was going on your show. And I've seen you on TV in the past. So you would look back at your life and say, you know, you set your goal years ago. You want to put things out there. You want to make the world a better place. You want to make your country a better place. This is your way to contribute. My way to contribute is to let people know they can use tactics and strategies that the military taught me. It teaches everybody when you're come along in the military how to work hard, how to set your goals, how to navigate adversity, how to use teamwork to get ahead because you can't do things on your own, how to empower your friends, your family, your community to be able to get things done. Because when you do that and you give it your all, what they call in the military selfless service, people help you along the way. People have lent that helping hand to me my entire career because they know that I'm willing to give it all to you. If I go out into the battlefield with you, I'm going to give it all. I'm going to run into the front of the line. I'm going to do what it needs to get done to save my battle buddy, my sisters, my brothers, those that I serve with. And when people recognize that of you, on my belief, they give you all they have. When I recognize that from somebody, they can have the shirt off my back. They're welcome at my home anytime. I'll give them anything they need, any resource that's available to me when I know that they're a true patriot and that they mean well. And I know that if people read this book and they just learn some of the principles, a couple of the principles, it will help improve your life in whatever aspect of that life that you want to improve.
Well, that is a great mantra to live by, and you certainly are inspiring people by living that kind of a life yourself. A retired Army officer, Captain Douglas Ernest, author, entrepreneur, patriot, and a great guest to have had on The Truth. Thank you so much today for coming on with us. And I hope that we are able to continue to keep in touch. And one more time, the Spirit of a True Patriot. Where do we get the book, and how do we follow you?
If you go to corvettewarehouse.com and you click under Meet the Owner, you'll see the link to the book and the story about the book and a synopsis about what's in that book. And then also you can visit my website at douglasernest.com. Just Google search the name. You'll see it everywhere. There's hundreds of links under Douglas Ernest. And you can go ahead and learn a little bit about me, learn a little bit about the Corvette Warehouse, and learn a lot about what's going on in the military today, the past, the present, and understand what you can do to make improvements in your life by buying this book and making changes in your life.
Thank you, Captain
Thank you,
Ernest.
John.
I enjoyed the conversation. You're a great interview. Come back anytime.
Thank you, John. The pleasure was mine.